Amnesia. The franchise took off running using many elements that made many indie horror games soar into popular mainstream, such as Let's Players providing over-exaggerated responses,
I'm not scared. Not even a little bit. Okay, I'm scared.
to the PlayStation character models that look somewhat scary, but when you really look at them, they're just comical. And you just feel like you've completed something extraordinary when in fact you've just completed a regular game. This is not hurting on the franchise. It never hit the same heights as Five Nights at Freddy's, but those enjoyed the franchise for what it delivered. I played the first game, and it was clear that it's meant to be watched and experienced and less about actually playing the game. Replaying the game just wasn't an option for me. And for the most part, I just never really wanted to explore the other games. This is not to say that the game was bad. It was dripping with atmosphere, but it wasn't as terrifying as some of the other survival horror games I played back in my day. After playing the first game, I just simply never really had any interest to explore any of the other games in the franchise. But with this one being on Game Pass, I decided to give it a go. And while it's definitely an improvement from my first experience with the franchise, Amnesia The Bunker definitely delivers on tension and difficulty, but it's not a game for everyone. Taking place during World War I, you take control of French soldier Henry Clement. Now, I know I'm butchering the names, but I'm an American, so I'm going to use that as an excuse. Take that for what it is. When fighting in no man's land, he is wounded when trying to save his friend Lambert. Henry wakes up in a bunker completely unaware of how he got there, with everyone inside completely gone, dead, and the bunker in shambles. Eventually you find out that the soldiers inside have been killed by a horrible beast, and you have been sealed inside by fleeing soldiers to prevent the creature from escaping. This starts your journey to locate supplies to blow the sealed exit and not get killed by the creature. The objective sounds simple, but it's anything but. The game story is basic with collectibles and the environment providing context. There was definitely a fight for survival here. The area is littered with mutilated bodies, cracked doors, sealed doors, and traps everywhere. The people down here knew they were facing a losing battle and simply tried to hold out, hoping that someone would come and somehow they would survive. It's definitely human desperation, and it's everywhere. This type of storytelling is always risky, but the developers did pull it off here. The optional collectibles ranging from photos to diaries really provide a picture of what was going on here during Henry's recovery, and you'll need to gather all these optional entries if you want to piece together the origin of the beast. Personally, I am a fan of this storytelling, so I enjoyed locating these optional pieces of paper, but if you avoid all the written material, you'll miss out on the entire story, not to mention some of the more critical story points and puzzles require you to read these documents. You'll have to locate a lot of written material while dealing with the constant threats of the beast hunting you everywhere. My major complaint is that Henry is basically an empty shell. He doesn't say anything, doesn't really react to anything other than a few grunts. I guess that's just him trying to be as silent as possible, given that the beast responds to even the most tiniest of sounds. But either way, it could have been like maybe a flash or something. Any type of dialogue, even if it was just one word, would have helped a lot. Regardless, Henry is just there to serve as a conduit for whatever is happening. I doubt anyone will feel any connection towards the protagonist, and while there are entries of his stay in the bunker, this is his bunker and these soldiers are his fellow soldiers, there's never a sense of camaraderie. In fact, it's more between Lambert and Henry because he provides more context of how dreadful he feels that Henry was injured trying to save him, and how everything transpiring to the bunker is him trying to figure out what's going on, what the hell is happening, and overall, you just never have that connection with the protagonist, and it's really just fleeting overall. The gameplay is where Amnesia The Bunker will create a division of whether you wish to continue. The game isn't survival horror, but more like puzzle horror, gathering supplies to use in a variety of specific situations and finding solutions where there's no one answer to how to do things. You still have to locate specific items, and they're usually in the same place. I say usually, but they are always in the same place, but other things change within the environment, so no one playthrough is ever the same. The developers really want you to think on your feet and come up with solutions while navigating the bunker each time. The opening level is a giant tutorial that just teaches you everything in one big crash course. Instead of slowly introducing the player to the mechanics, the developers decided just to show you everything you can't do right at the start. Here's a 3-minute tutorial, go nuts, this is everything you need to know, you better remember it. Henry wakes up in the bunker and starts off with just a wind-up flashlight that produces a lot of noise, is unreliable, and just an annoying thing that you have to deal with, and a revolver from one of the only living soldiers left, but that's short-lived. You'll make friends with the flashlight because you're going to be winding up this thing a lot, and it will be tedious and annoying so much. Like, just be prepared for this annoying little piece of garbage. I honestly just hate this thing. But I guess it's there to try and create tension, and this was just the meet-in point of what they can do for a flashlight that's unreliable at the same time maintaining the game's atmosphere. Eventually, you'll gather tools from his fellow soldiers' lockers by locating their discarded dog tags and find the code usually written on the back of the dog tag. For the most part, these are optional upgrades that take up space in your limited inventory. You do have access to a storage system to pick and choose what you want to take with you, and you can expand your inventory with packs hidden throughout the environment, but most of these optional upgrades are not mandatory. In fact, you can avoid most of them and just go on playing the game. These are more of conveniences in order to avoid certain traps or added more options to defend yourself. Every item you pick up is a tool, even the weapons and the light itself. Since you cannot kill the beast, you must either scare it off or hinder its senses. The creature hates the light, and you can temporarily light up the bunker using an old generator. The issue is that it needs constant fuel, and you'll have to manually turn on light sources throughout the environment, with some light sources turning off if you flip a switch, but I only saw this mechanic once in the soldier's communication hub. However, this doesn't prevent the beast from entering illuminated areas, and will still charge the area if you cause enough noise. You do have access to a stopwatch to keep track of how much fuel is left, but most of us will ignore this since it takes up valuable space. Sound plays a critical role here, similar to Alien Isolation, so anything you do can alert the creature to your location, where it will appear from these little holes throughout the environment. Everything from running, jumping, breaking objects, or dropping a heavy object will alert the beast. Once the creature takes notice, it will come out and it will start hunting for you in the bunker. At this point, you have a choice to hide or fight. Henry can take cover beneath beds and tables, and the lights flickering indicate that the creature is near to add atmosphere to it, with Henry's vision fading as you look at the creature, indicating his dropping of sanity, but this is mostly for just cosmetic purposes. I was looking directly at the beast for about a good minute, and nothing really happened. I get what it's going for, and it does work for the overall atmosphere. If caught, you're basically dead, with rare circumstances of survival. If you get hurt, simply looking at the menu will highlight your health based on how many fingers are covered in blood. And if you are low on health, the blood will actually attract the creature to your location and allow it to follow you. Thankfully, the developers didn't pull a Dark Souls, and if you pause the game when you're in the menu, everything stops moving, which is a great touch. I think the option to allow this would have been better, but honestly, I prefer to pause the games knowing that I'm safe and I can pick my options. The beast itself is a terrifying creature to behold, and you have to stay far away from it. The hideous combination of human and primal creature, all it's missing to me is a unique howl. It's kind of a generic wolf howl, at least from what I heard, but I think some combination of human and beast would have been much more ideal, because clearly it is a hybrid. It's clear the developers took inspiration from Alien Isolation, as the beast acts with a large sense of independence, but it's not as sophisticated. In Alien Isolation, the creature not only hunted the player, but attacked humans and avoided the synthetics, with its own plan for existence. It definitely felt more alive that this was a primal creature. You are the primary focus here, and if nothing else is happening to draw its attention, it almost feels like it fades into the ether. Since you're the only thing it wants, it just seems strange that it just doesn't rush you with full force the second it hears you. I get it's for balancing purposes for the gameplay, but for narrative, there's no reason that this creature just doesn't bash everything into the room once it enters it. The game does include a safe room, but it doesn't work like Capcom's Resident Evil franchise. Instead, these areas are blocked with both locks that you have to manually set up, and the interaction for the doors and locks are obtusely annoying. To interact with an object, you have to hold down the interact button and then tilt the joystick to move the item. This is also for locks, and I just honestly find it incredibly annoying. For doors, I can understand the system for peeking to see if the creature notices you, but for everything from opening locks to cabinets, they could have simply gone with a simple button press. There's no reason for you to have to manually open these doors. Interacting with objects can also feel stiff, but this is more for intentional purposes as it adds to the atmosphere. Whether it's loading one bullet at a time and emptying shell casings from your revolver, or when you're activating a flare, it definitely feels like you're acting with purpose, and in this situation, I agree with the slow, methodical take. Outside of the beast, the other creatures you'll face are infected rats. These creatures block your way and won't attack unless you get too close, serving as organic electric fences that can temporarily be removed with flares, gas grenades, or actual grenades. You can even shoot them, and these will permanently remove the rats at the cost of very valuable supplies and the beast hearing you. They more are concerned with eating dead flesh of humans, but you can burn the bodies to remove the creatures from the area. In hindsight, these rats are more annoying than challenging because they only add some way for you to waste your supplies, especially if you have to repeatedly go to the same area if you're looking for collectibles or you feel like you've missed something. This is a survival experience, so you'll need to gather resources to craft to overcome each of the challenges. The system is simple enough. Highlight a craftable item, and if it can be combined, a plus sign appears on the menu. You can make bandages, torches, and Molotovs to use. But as I stated earlier, these tools are meant for overcoming certain barriers and not meant for combat. In fact, the game encourages you to avoid combat at all costs, with some situations calling for it, such as this situation where you have to blow up this explosive barrel in order to avoid the beast. Since items that can be used for combat can be put to better use elsewhere, it's encouraged for you to save them, such as clearing rats or destroying locks. Grenades are great for scaring the beast, but are better for breaking down wooden doors. You'll find a lot of locked doors, and this is just a valuable option. You can find a brick that can break down these wooden doors, but these are also very rare, and since the game randomizes item placements, you won't always have that option. And if you're feeling primal, you can actually just use your gun to break open the lock like out of a TV show, which is incredible. The bunker definitely feels like it was designed with a last stand in mind. You'll find areas barricaded, trip mines everywhere, and even a prison where they left behind soldiers who were captured just to die in this godforsaken place. It'll definitely feel like it's every man for himself, as those who couldn't get out in time are now food or had to put up some sort of makeshift trap in hopes of surviving. But how the puzzles are, you may ask? Well, the puzzles in Amnesia The Bunker vary. Most of the puzzles involve collecting and grab a document that tells you where the item of significance is located, all while avoiding the beast, which serves as the biggest obstacle. And don't expect that you can just speed through them by watching a walkthrough. The developers changed the codes and the locations for every item during each playthrough, so just because they're in one location doesn't mean they'll be in another. For example, in The Bunker, when you have to locate a key that's not in the security office, sometimes it may be underneath a pillow, or it may be in one of the little cubby pan things on the edge of the bed. I don't know, I forgot what they're called, but this is just an example of how things change each time, so it adds variety to whatever you play the game. Sometimes there is a variation to the puzzle, such as turning on power or forced encounters with the beast, but nothing too hard. Most of the problems come from finding out where to go. The game does include a map in certain areas, not a portable one, and a red marker to show where you should explore. Since much of the game is designed with specific environmental tells, it's easy to get a sense of where you are, but the biggest problem, as I stated, is like, what do you do and where do you go? You have to figure that out on your own, and it's never really clear. Sometimes you just have to do trial and error and force. Now, death is expected, and unless you play on easy, expect to die a lot, especially on the hardest difficulty. The game doesn't have checkpoints, but instead uses lanterns in specific areas to save your progress. I also felt death was a learning experience, as when you get killed, I was better attuned to what was expected of me. That being said, the load times in this game are obtusely high, so dying comes with that little issue where you have to wait for a long time for load times. Another thing that I found incredibly annoying was the fact that every time I went to a new area, the game had to unload and reload another portion of the map. It always felt like it was breaking immersion, because suddenly maybe the beast was in the area that I was in, but to force the beast encounter, they suddenly had to remove the other section of the map, so the beast would be lured into another section of the map. That's why I said that the beast is not as sophisticated as the alien, where I always felt like the alien had somewhat of a larger playing ground in order to hunt for the player. Yeah, there were specific environments where the alien would actively hunt you. Here, it just feels like it's being forced by the player, so they will encounter the beast during these certain levels. Instead of the creature probably being lured to another section of the bunker, the developers decide, no, let's make sure that they're in this section, so you will constantly be on edge. I just feel like it's artificial difficulty, and especially when you play on the world's most powerful console, it just seems like it should be loaded entirely, and there shouldn't be any loading times between any of these sections, especially when you die. Now, there's no music in Amnesia The Bunker. All of it is entirely sound-based. This was a terrific decision, as it amplifies the tension of being alone, trapped with this thing, and just trying to find your way through everything. The heavy stomps as the beast roams the bunker, the wails of those who are still alive, and the chomping of rats on man meat, complementing the sound-based gameplay as you hear the ringing of your ears each time you shoot your gun or grenade blows up. You're in an enclosed space after all, and these sounds will bounce back and create just loud feedback. And all of it just heightens the sense of isolation and the fear of wondering if your next step will alert the creature, such as when you go into a vent, fall down, break a table, and suddenly you're like, oh my god, what the hell, is it coming? Hearing your footsteps, the lights flicker and sending you into a panic, is it coming? It's all just terrific design, and I absolutely love it. Great job on just creating this unnerving atmosphere. That being said, Amnesia The Bunker isn't free from technical issues. While it's not to the same standard as Jedi Survivor or Lord of the Rings Gollum, there are a lot of issues that I encountered. For example, I had my fair share of crashes. The game has extremely long load times despite running on an Xbox Series X, and like I stated, every time you enter a new area of the bunker, the game will stop and load. There are some strange animations, such as your flashlight not, appearing the light in your hand, and occasionally there is clipping and rats disappearing. Again, this is just expected. I don't expect AAA quality, more like AA quality, but for the most part, it's a very stable game. Another thing that I found extremely strange is that if you hard quit the game, it resets all your customized options. It was annoying that I had to reset everything that I wanted in the game right when I just hard crashed and had to restart the entire game. From inverted y-axis, I know that's taboo, but I like it. Turning off hints and a lot of other options. I just feel like this shouldn't be a problem considering it's 2023, and most game developers has figured out that if you save your options, it should save your options. Amnesia The Bunker is definitely an intense puzzle horror title. It leans more on using the right tools for each situation rather than classic survival horror. Navigating the bunker and evading the creature can lead to both moments of intensity and vexation, but altogether it still provides a sense of dread and just overall that sense of heebie-jeebies that horror gamers really love, with each new playthrough altering the elements to keep things fresh. It's definitely not a game for everyone and requires equal parts patience and fortitude to complete the game. If you're not someone who's all for patience or the ability to defend yourself, this game probably won't be for you. I would say the good benchmark is whether or not you enjoyed Alien Isolation. If you didn't enjoy that game, there's no reason you'll enjoy this game. As for a second playthrough, I honestly don't see myself coming back for more, mainly because Amnesia The Bunker just feels like a game that's worthy for a first experience, but going back and replaying the game just doesn't seem that much appealing as opposed to more other titles. I think majorly because that the game just doesn't have the same sense of fun and engagement as, say, a game like Resident Evil. That's not saying that everyone doesn't have their personal preference. It's because a lot of this game is RNG and just waiting for the beast to avoid you, and I honestly don't see a lot of people replaying the game for a second playthrough because of those elements. Maybe speedrunners and intense horror streamers may, but for the average Joe, I just don't see it. There are two different endings in the game, but you can easily just reload and save. Since the game saves right before the final battle, you can get both endings relatively easily, and it's pretty easy to figure out which ending is what. Either way, I do think that Amnesia The Bunker is worth checking out if you're a horror fan. It definitely checks all the right boxes, but it's definitely a game for a niche audience. It's not for everyone, and you definitely have to push yourself to enjoy the game. It's going to be rough for the first hour, but once you get into the rhythm of things, that's when the game starts to get more engaging. It's definitely a game like Death Stranding, where you have to really put yourself into the game's shoes and play the game for what it is instead of what you want it to be. So that's the review. I'll put up all the relative social media and stuff right now. Remember to like, sub, and share. It does help a great deal. And tell me what you think about Amnesia, if you thought my review was adequate, if it hit all the boxes, or if it was complete BS and you think I'm completely wrong. Either way, thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. If you reach to the end, you have no idea how much that means. And this is me, signing out. Have a good one.